Planner versus pantser. Do you plan everything out in your story before you write it? Do you write a strict outline? Or do you fly by the seat of your pants? Do you discover the story as you write it? I am a planner through and through. I can't work unless I know where I'm headed. I need an outline. Nothing wrong with being a pantser, but it's not me. So, how do I outline a novel? How do you outline a novel? That's what today's video is about. We are going to outline a novel. You may notice I am at my desk, not back in my chair. You can see all the behind the scenes garbage behind me. This video will be a little bit more informal because I'm actually going to show my work. I think it'll be a little bit more helpful that way. If you like it, let me know. I'll do more content like this. If not, back to the chair. I'll probably go back to the chair anyway. So let's look. This is Scrivener. You may or may not be familiar with Scrivener. Scrivener is writing software. And now that Windows PC has upgraded to 3.0, like Mac, I can unreservedly give my endorsement. That's the word. Endorsement of Scrivener. I use it for every single novel. I use it for stuff that's not novels. I use these videos. I use Scrivener to lay them out, to script them, and to organize my thoughts around them. It's great for all kinds of writing projects, but I use it specifically for my novel writing. I write in Scrivener and then compile it to whatever format I need. It's great for indie publishing, all kinds of stuff. This is not a video about Scrivener, but there's a lot of tutorials about Scrivener out there that I would suggest you go to those first, but get that out of the way. This is the empty Scrivener file I start every single of my novels with. And is how I start every single outline. So, let's outline a novel. How do we start? How do I start? Well, I have, first off, we have to have our idea. What is the basis for the novel? What's the gimmick? What's the premise? So I've titled this file Gun Cult in my last video, the ideas video. You can go watch it. I mentioned that as one of the little notes on my desk at the time. So I thought, let's start with that. It's also a novel I probably won't ever actually write, but maybe I will after we do this. So this is called Gun Cult. I don't really have a title for it other than that. And maybe, I'll retitle it later on down the road if it gets that far. So we start with just a simple text file right on top. You see my binder over here. I'll go over that in a second. But we start with something I'll call story broad. I always call it that. It's basically the very broad premise of the book. And I will lay that out. And if I'm ever lost, I always come back to that if I need kind of reaffirmment of what am I actually writing about. So story broad, the book is called Gun Cult. So I was doing some brainstorming earlier. I thought about this. What would my Gun Cult story about? If I told the words Gun Cult to you might have a different idea than I do, but this is my book for now. Gun Cult. So it is about a cult for people who love guns. When I think about that, I think about the American obsession with guns. So I'm thinking about theme, just thinking about the plot. I'm thinking about theme. I'm thinking about what this story is about. What characters will it require? Gun Cult, American obsession with guns. We have Protagonist. I think who doesn't like guns. Doesn't like guns. Let's see, traumatic event happens to him. Falls in with gun cult, this aforementioned gun cult. And we kind of see him become a member of this, realize he's in a cult, and then there's fallout from that. And I think, so falls in with gun cult, becomes a member, realizes he's in too deep, and fallout. And at this point, that's enough for this. It doesn't need to be any more detailed than this. I will detail everything else in the rest of the stuff. So we have that. So I don't even have a name for this protagonist yet. You don't need one. I don't need one at this point. That's going to slow me down. And you'll see me do this a lot while I'm outlining stuff. Is the details don't necessarily matter too much at this point. They will absolutely matter, but they also take a lot of time and thought. Like, I want my character's name to be good and impactful, memorable, and it makes sense in the context of the book. That's a lot of thought. Let's take some time to sit down and think about that. I don't want to worry about that right now. I want to worry about the story. I want to worry about the kind of the bones, the skeleton is what we're laying down here. So next we move on to something called story beats. And this is how I start with. Before I get to any chapters, I don't worry about that yet. I think about story beats. First and foremost, I had mentioned in my previous video about how this results in a suspenseful story. It's because I structure my chapters around story beats. You want big story beats to come at the end of chapters. Big reveals, big character moments, acts of violence, if dramatic things. You always want them to come at the end of chapters. Especially when you're working in genre fiction, when you're working in anything involving suspense, you want it to be page turner. You want to have that cliffhanger to pull your reader onto the next chapter. So before I get anywhere, I think about story beats, and I think about what I want to happen in the story, where I think the story is going to start and end, and then fill in the blanks. So. Story broad, we're back to this. Doesn't like guns. Traumatic event happens to him. Falls in with gun cult. Becomes a member. Realizes in too deep and fallout. Those are story beats in and of themselves, honestly. So we're going to start with the beginning. It always helps me to start. So I just add a text document underneath my story beats folder. And it's not going to be detailed. It's going to be very simple. It's going to be a 1 or 2 sentence explanation of something that happens. We're going to say protagonist gets attacked. So we're going to start off our story with a protagonist being, I'm picturing Everyman, but we'll flesh out his character later. Protagonist, Protag's house gets broken into, can't defend himself, loses something of value, and hurt. Let's say he's injured, but not severely. Not severely. There you go. How many? That's 16 words, and that's more than honestly that I would need, honestly. But see, that's where we start. We start the story with a big punch, something grab the reader's attention, and to set up our main character, and his point of view. So. Maybe for whatever reason, which we'll probably get into, he doesn't like guns. He doesn't own a weapon. And let's actually clarify this. I think this is important. Attacker has a gun, and uses it to impose his will on our protagonist. So, the protagonist now he gets attacked. So. That's where we start off, and that's pretty much set in stone. I think at this point that can always be moved around. We can always add a chapter in before or after, but for now, let's start with that. So we have this kind of general idea of what's going to happen. So traumatic event happens to him, falls in with this cult, becomes a member, realizes he's in too deep, fallout. So this is what I usually do before I get into more brainstorming is I have the beginning. Let's worry about the ending. And this might not be the actual ending, but it is sort of a placeholder ending so that I can brainstorm along the way and fill in all these story beats I'm going to need. And I probably will have 20 to 30 story beats by the time I'm done with this part of the outline. So ending to me, I was thinking about this earlier. I'm gonna guess that he discovers some nefarious behavior, some downright illegal, evil behavior from this cult. They probably hurt him or someone he loves or in some way, and the story is going to end with him attacking this cult, probably attacking the leader specifically and killing them. So protag, showdown with leader of cult. So I don't even have to fill in anything here. This is that is all we have. Protag showdown with leader of cult. So that's our ending, right? So now we're gonna, let's do this. Boop. Makes it look a little bit easier to follow. So now we have a beginning and an ending. So now we just fill in the blanks with every kind of big dramatic thing that will happen in the course of the story. None of these are set in stone, by the way. Some of them I will use, some of them I won't. But doing this helps flush out these story ideas and gives you a lot of ammunition and fuel and fodder to work with as you are outlining your book. You want it's better to have too much than too little. I think that's a problem a lot of people have when they're trying to outline a novel and they're struggling because they end up writing about a lot of nothing. You want these to be impactful, dramatic. You can fill in. It's a lot easier to fill in with kind of quiet or more introspective chapters and stuff like that. Scenes that you discover character growth and quiet, like dialogue and stuff like that. Those scenes are easier to improv and come up with on the fly. This stuff is more important because it sets off the big character arcs for your characters. So protagonist gets attacked. So let's work our way through. After that, he is probably we're gonna have him recover. Picks up the pieces, basically. Picks up the pieces. Probably maybe he's at the hospital getting fixed. And then we need something that connects him to this cult, right? We want him to get in with this cult. So this is as good as anything, and it can always also, this covers everything, can change. He sees an ad. For either on a billboard or on the television at the hospital or even back at his house. Sees an ad for a gun store. So picks up the pieces out of the hospital, sees an ad for a gun store. So recovery. I'm going to tell this picks up the pieces. I think that's more accurate. So our protagonist is obviously upset, traumatized from this very scary experience, and he reacts with, "Well, I need a weapon. I need to defend myself." This has driven him to want a gun because it makes him feel safe. So, story beats. Let's add another one. That's a story beat that will end a chapter. What's him seeing that ad for that gun store? He goes to the gun store. That's not necessarily a big story beat, not yet, but it will absolutely flesh out. Like I'm going to say the owner of this store is the leader of the gun cult. Owner of store is leader of gun cult. I'm going to say he's probably very knowledgeable about weaponry and firearms, and he's a great salesman. So he pitches our protagonist on the gun, and then probably maybe offhandedly says, and the guy's like, I don't know anything about guns. He's like, well, you can come to, we have a firing range at this place. Come and I'll teach you. So story beats, let's see. So that leads us to our, let's say, firing range right there. Protag gets gun. Don't know if there could be different legalities and laws about how long you have to wait for a gun, all that stuff. You can figure that stuff out later. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to write a chapter about him waiting for a gun. You can just jump to him when he has a gun in his hand. Protag gets this gun, however he does it, goes to firing range with imitation, sheepish, but learns basics and feels good. I think that's important. We want to connect the power of wielding a gun and how powerful it makes you feel, because it's important for his character arcs, right? So firing range, he goes to the firing range, and this is where he's starting to get in a little deeper with our who will be our villain. Doesn't know that yet, but he's getting a little deeper in with our villain. Maybe villain is eyeing him up for maybe you can join. And this is, I think, also a point where we're at the firing range. There's probably other members of the cult already here. Maybe all of them are members of the cult, and he doesn't really realize that. Our protagonist maybe doesn't realize that now. At this point, I think we need to, let's have him touch base with friends. So touch base with friends just means like talk, have him go out with some people he knows already. So older friends who are probably like him and don't own weapons, and they're taken aback maybe that he has bought a gun and he went to a firing range, and he brings this up, and they are maybe they're probably doubtful about this. We want conflict, so we want his friends to not really like the fact that he bought a weapon. We kind of want his friends to be a little bit, they heard something about the guy, the villain, maybe you heard them. So touch base with friends. So we don't have to go into all that detail right now. This is just what's going on up here. I'm just talking to you guys through my thoughts. I would not write any of this down yet. I'm just writing touch base with friends and worry about the rest later. Touch base with friends. Let's say he wants, we jump after this back in touch. Let's see. Villain takes him hunting. Let's say he goes hunting. Hunting is that's a very evocative action, because it gives us time. There's a lot of quiet time for him, the villain, and our protagonist to talk, for the villain to sell him more on joining. And maybe he's even eyeing him up, seeing how good of a shot he is. And we can also have a lot of good inner conflict here with our protagonist. He's never hunted before, and he's going to kill an animal. But I think he can have a good opportunity to get him peer pressured. The villain can hey, you should do this. They're deer hunting, right? And he kills a deer, kills a buck, maybe something actually very impressive, and he actually is a pretty good shot. And the villain's kind of impressed, and this is what he's like, hey, why don't you come and meet everyone at this club? Pretty sure I think that's what we'll call it for now. I think the villain would call it's not a cult, the gun club. So, and I think this is him getting not inducted, but getting vetted by the rest of the group. So first time in gun club. So that's there. So we're organizing this in rough order as we go. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just type stuff up, and move it around as I go, especially in things that I don't really have a better sense of where I want to go with it. First time in gun club, he gets vetted. So he wants to join. He needs initiation. We need initiation. He needs to go do something, probably. I don't know what this is, honestly, but we don't need to know that right now. We know that he needs to be initiated. So initiation, and that's probably good for what I generally kind of fall back onto a 3-act structure, especially when I don't really know what the novel is at this point. I just have like the idea and some story beats. I just fall back on a 3-act structure. So this might be good for the first act, effectively. If I'm doing this is what I'll do at first. I'll just put a new folder underneath first act. Move that up in here and put this stuff in here. So first act, and then I'll leave it open so I can see stuff and move it around if I need to. Story beats, new folder, second act. Move that. Okay, I think it's not. Yeah, put that in there. So I'll move that down there. So where we're at, the protagonist is in the cult, effectively. We'll move our showdown down there. He's in the cult, effectively. So if we're escalating the story, we want it to be, get a little bit more dangerous, and I think, sunshines and roses at first. Group activity with cult. Maybe, and probably a little bit of suspicious chatter. So maybe, okay, he's a member of the cult. He's enjoying himself. And you realize, he's starting to feel like there's maybe a little bit of warning signs here and there. But this is maybe we hear it. Not necessarily, he doesn't necessarily absorb all this, but the reader is going to get this. So a little bit of suspicious here. We're planting the seeds. We're probably already suspicious, honestly. The reader's probably already a little suspicious about these people. Plant a little bit more seeds. Because by the middle of the second act, we probably want things to start falling apart. Not actively, but the cracks are beginning to show, right? Because by the end of the second act, things are basically fallen apart. So second act, let's say blows off friends to hang with cult. So blows off friends to hang with cult. Protagonist, let's say friends call it a cult for the first time. And this is, again, more seeds. Our protagonist is a little bit, So second act, we need more story beats that are like the second act. Make this is, I think, an important thing. Is probably almost always the hardest. Not even the second act. If you aren't doing a 3-act structure, the middle chunk of your story is usually the hardest to both outline and to write. It is the part that kind of it's easy to settle into a lull, like, oh yeah, it's going to start to slow down a little bit and be a little bit over a slog, both to write and to read. And we don't want that. We want to keep action moving. So we want stuff to keep happening. So something suspicious what's the big story beat is this. This is our protagonist starting to realize what he's in, when he's gotten himself into. So we want to escalate the danger here. I think the danger has always been suggested up into this part. So let's say he discovers something. Late night drinking. We get some alcohol involved with some of his new friends, and leads to confession. It's not really confession, but one member of the cult admits to killing someone. And I think our protagonist is probably, I don't know, kind of scared by this, honestly. He's starting to realize, and then I'm probably, everyone is well aware that, yeah, we've killed people before. He realizes, Protag realizes he's in the midst of killers. That all the people around him are, or not all, but most probably have killed someone. Maybe they are even, maybe they start to laugh about it, you know? So this is, I think, an interesting thing, because this is the part where I always go like, I'm starting to run out of steam. I don't know where to go with it right here. So this is when I would say, well, I know where I want the second act to end. Okay, I want it to end with him, Protag, leaving Colt. Ominously, probably. So leaves Colt, ominous warning from leader. So that'll be the end of the second act. But we need, there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen in here. We're not going to worry about that. So, because we can work our way back to it. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do, so story beats, add folder, third act. We're going to jump straight to the third act. You know, we're running a little empty on our second act, but we know that where we want to end, and we know where we want our second act to end. So what will happen after he leaves the cult? Or at least tries to leave the cult. Well, we can work backwards from our ending. If we want a protagonist showdown with leader of cult, I imagine that we're going to probably have some sort of headquarters, some sort of gun club headquarters, probably in some isolated area, because that's a great setting, and it makes sense. Or if you have a gun club and you have a fire range, it has to be away from everything else for the most part. So we need to get our protagonist to this isolated area. So he's probably going to have to go through some people. So protagonist heads to HQ. And this is this would be this is him traveling. That's not very exciting narratively. Like, unless he's like, on some chase or something, but this is probably good a chance for us to get into his head a little bit, for him to think about where he's come from, where he is now, the fact that he is, if he wants to go have a showdown with the leader of the cult, maybe kill him, he has to be very angry. I think, that gives us a good kind of clue about what could incentivize him to want to kill the leader of the cult. Probably, let's see, we have, let's say cult strikes back. So cult, blood in, blood out, maybe, or cult is angry that he wants to leave. So they strike back, damages, maybe destroys his car. Maybe. Or breaks into his house when he's not home, steals some stuff from him. We don't know. It doesn't matter at this point. Don't need to worry about that. We'll flesh that out when we get on the next step. So, cult strikes back. This is when, what does he want to do? He doesn't want to fight. I don't think our guy's he's naturally a peaceful person, and maybe the guns have changed him a little bit, but he definitely doesn't want to try and take them on. Not at first. We have to escalate to that. So goes the cops. Asks for help. Rebuffed. Maybe we see a connection between the cops. See, some corruption in the police force, and they're connected. See connection to gun cult with cops. And he realizes, I'm not going to have any help. And that further isolates him. We probably want, at this point, maybe, I think we're going to have a final meeting of the last, villain tries to bring him back. tries to appeal to his, villain, tries to bring him back, tries to talk it out with him. Is rebuffed. And this is kind of maybe the last straw for the villain. He's like, oh, I tried my best, and this protagonist obviously doesn't want to be with us. So what do I have to, I have to do something. So how is he going to hurt our protagonist? It's a really important question. I think he's going to kidnap one of his friends. Kidnaps a friend. One of those friends that, one of those friends that our protagonist was talking to earlier. He's probably one of those people that got kidnapped. Probably making a male friend. Probably the one who's the loudest. The villain probably blames him for our protagonist leaving the group. So he's going to kidnap him. And this will be our leading right to our climax, right to the end of the story. Let's say blows up friends to hang with Colt. Late night drinking leads to confession. Okay, so we'll get back to the second act a little bit. Another story beat. Let's say Protag investigates HQ. So he's at the HQ. He's suspicious now. He's going to look for signs of crime. He's going to look for things that he thinks that the guy, this villain, this cult has done before. And maybe they have plans. Maybe they're gun runners. That makes, they're passing guns around. That leads to more death and more killing. I think that's probably finds evidence of gun running. Maybe even like military weapons. Maybe one of these members has military connections and stuff falls off the back of a truck or something. So he investigates this, finds evidence of these crimes. It'd really be fun right now. Another solo outing with villain. I love these kinds of story beats, where we get nice tension between the two. As the villain maybe wants to get closer with our protagonist, and also maybe they're testing each other a little bit. Maybe the protagonist is trying to get a little bit more evidence from the villain that they've committed crimes, etc., etc. Another solo outing with villain. Protagonist still not sure what he's going to do though. He's afraid. He doesn't want to leave because he has to admit, and I think there's a part of him he admits. He liking being a part of this club and the camaraderie and the power of owning a gun. And I think there's another part that's very fearful of leaving the group, and also it's part of him that's kind of disgusted. Another solo outing with villain. So, how will we escalate from there? Invited along for crime. So invited along for crime. He's a member of the group. He has to pull his share. So he's invited along for this gun running. Probably at this point sees someone die. Sees someone get killed probably. Maybe even a member of the group for whatever reason. I think that's actually really effective. Member of the group. Someone who's not playing by the rules, or maybe our villain, our leader, is suspicious of them double crossing or something. We'll figure that out. So our protagonist is invited along for crime. This is the point where he's starting to panic. And the cracks are starting. Talks to friend. So this is a panicky protag. I don't even know that's how you spell it. I think it's right. Protag talks to friend. You notice how we're creating characters as we go, basically. Like, who do we need? How do these characters fit in this story? So we have our protagonist. We have our friend of the protagonist. We have the villain. We have other members of the cult. Do we need more than that? You should not. You should have literally the exact amount of characters you need and no more. keeps your story tight, keeps it really easy to follow, and people start to lose track of characters when you have, a dozen of them. If you have a half dozen, that's probably really all you need, at least fully fleshed out characters. You can have a lot of side characters that are just, there for stuff, but Panicky Protag talks to a friend, admits what he saw, and this is the point where the friend tells him, you need to get out of there. You need to leave. I think this is when he tries to extricate himself. So villain invites him along again. Villain invites him along again. This is probably even more serious a situation. We might play this by ear, but I would say that our protag either backs out or runs away in the middle of it. Like, this is the breaking point, basically. Invites him along again. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's probably good enough. There's going to be more than this for the proper outline. Because then we get Protagonist leaves Cult. So I'd say we have something. I think our third act doesn't start immediately with Cult Strikes Back. So Cult reaches out. Display of force. I think the Cult probably reaches out to our protagonist, gives him a chance, says, I saw you freaked out. That's okay. We still love you. We still want you with us. Like that. It's kind of a familiar pattern with dangerous abusive relationships, is where they want to, oh no, you're a friend. Please come back. It'll be okay. And then he probably rebuffs them again. So then we have Cult Strikes Back. He goes to cops. Villain brings strikes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's probably enough too. That's probably it for story beats. Again, this is not going to be everything in the outline. So we have our story beats. That's the first step. So at this point that we start converting these story beats into proper parts of the outline. And at the same time, we are going to be building our characters. So let's say we know what our this is set in stone. I think I have a chapter outline right here. You can look and see. Setting, characters, purpose, characters need, and POV. I generally don't fill in most of the stuff unless I really need to. You are free to. You can steal this from me and make it one of the templates inside Scrivener if you want. I just found this online a long time ago. I don't remember where it was, but it suits my purpose basically perfectly, which I think is a good idea. If this doesn't work for you, you don't like what this looks like, invent your own, find something online, try a lot of different things, and use those until you find something that feels right to you, that works for your workflow, how you write, how you think. This works for me, and it's not a bad place to start. And if you don't like it, do something else. So chapter outline, protagonist, see, and then we get, oh wait, and this is usually what happens. I can name the chapter. This will be attack in the night. That's the name of the chapter. I need a character. I need a protagonist. And this is how I do it. As I use them, I'm like, wait, I need a protagonist. It's at this point where I need to name them. I'm gonna name him the character. What's our character's name? Protagonist's name? I don't know. I'm gonna name him Tim. Tim Hodges. No, Tim Hopkins. That may not last. But this is the default character sketch that comes with Scrivener, and I find this is exactly. I don't need anything more than this. Honestly, this is sometimes too much. Rolling story, protagonist. So here I'm creating a character for occupation. What is his job? What fits? What makes sense for Tim Hopkins? Who's our guy who's getting involved with this gun club? What would his job be? I think we want something that's relatively peaceful, something innocuous, but also has gives him have a circle of friends. Something the opposite of this, these adventure craving gun hobbyists. Works at a desk. I'll say he's a desk jockey, whatever that means. Data entry or something. Physical description, probably say he's not. I would say he's not he's not like a terrible shape. Probably does non-terrible shape. Average height. Maybe a little pudgy, but works out. But probably like Pilates or rides a bike. We want to give him this character type of a little bit lacking in masculinity, or at least, stereotypical masculinity, because we want to have that change be very drastic. As he indulges in these guns, he's probably going to be hanging around these guys who love guns, probably going to get into lift weights and eat red meat, all that stuff. So we want the opposite of that. I won't say you go so far as to make him a vegetarian, but you know what I mean. Personality. A nice guy. I think that's the thing. He's nice. He's a nice guy. We want someone our audience can root for. But we also want it, again, we want that drastic shift. If he is getting, kind of brainwashed a little by this cult and how important guns are and the power of brainwashing and all that stuff, we want there to be a big contrast there. So he's a nice guy. Maybe a little bit of a pushover, honestly. Afraid of confrontations. Because again, we want that contrast of the guy he is before, the guy he is after. Habits and mannerisms. Bites his fingernails. Nervous habit. Again, that might not even last into the draft, but it's there and it gives you an idea of who he is. Background. Normal childhood maybe mothered a little bit too much. Has a strained relationship with her, lost his dad at a young age. He didn't have a dad growing up. I think that ties back into our the connections of the masculinity and how that's attached to this image of owning a gun and power and all that stuff. I think it's all connected, and it can let us explore that stuff. So he didn't have a dad. Maybe this villain is even fulfilling a fatherly role a little bit. He can be like an older male character. Lost his dad at a young age. Otherwise, but is smart, worked hard, smart enough even. I don't want to call him smart, but smart enough, worked hard. Has a job in his field, did the right things, but wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to protect him when someone came in and broke in. Again, ties stuff in. Internal conflicts. I sometimes don't even write these out for smaller characters, but for our main characters, I do. Internal conflicts. Kind of versus a battle between the man he was, the man he is, and the man he wants to be. So he doesn't know who he wants to be. Image, self-image, identity, all that stuff. External conflicts. The mugger, the attacker, obviously. Which we probably, it probably makes good sense to, I think that's perfect. So we're going to finish this and then I have an idea with that attacker. The attacker, the villain, his friends. In order. They'll have, conflicts between all those people, and it doesn't necessarily mean physical conflict. Doesn't mean he's going to get a fight. So the attacker, person who attacked him. I think this is the perfect example of. This will be the villain invites him along again. It's because the villain has probably tracked down the man who attacked him. And he's probably going to give Tim a chance to make it even maybe even kill him. And Tim maybe backs off. And so I think that's the point where our villain probably kills the attacker for Tim, because Tim can't handle it. That's perfect. Mwah, love it. So attacked in the night. We have Tim now. So Tim's asleep. Hears a noise in the night. Wakes up. Prowls the house. Probably, let's say, with some blunt weapon, baseball bat or something, not a gun. This is raise tension. He's afraid. We want to reinforce I'm writing the first chapter effectively, and so this is like, I don't need to be everything that happens in the chapter to be spelled out for me at this point. Maybe you do, but you can add those details if you want them. Sometimes these are just notes for tone, how I want this chapter to feel. Well, we want Tim's afraid. Tim wakes up. Tim's afraid. He's searching his house. Focus on what he's afraid to lose. Maybe just bought something really expensive. And it was, he had saved up for it and he doesn't want to lose it. Or maybe there's something that has sentimental value and he doesn't want to lose that. You don't know. Runs into attacker, gets a drop on him. I think that's the thing. Attacker gets a drop on him, has a gun, has a pistol or shotgun or something, weapon, has a pistol. Let's say pistol whips him. Tim hurt badly. Tim is tied up, forced to watch as attacker steals from him. Tim tries to escape from his ropes or whatever, and is knocked unconscious. Wakes up sometime later. Attacker is gone. House, this thing he didn't want to lose, is gone. I would say I think we can see, we've already said he lost his dad at his young age. Probably something his dad left him, something really valuable, like a watch, antique watch, something like one of the pocket watches, like our old Rolex or something like that are really valuable. But he doesn't really care much how much it's worth. It's more about sentimental value to Tim. But old watch stolen. This sets everything in motion. So we have our first chapter. So we are about to go to pick up the pieces. See, I'm working through our story beats basically. So Protag gets attacked. It's done. Picks up the pieces, and we'll put this in next. So, this is him recovering. So add new chapter outline. Recovery. I'll call it. Tim is getting stitches. Tim is getting stitches, and at the same time giving police report. Trying to remember details, failing. Cop obviously doesn't care that much. No one cares. I think the nurse or doctor giving him the stitches is just like, come on, whatever. You're just another patient. The cop's just taking down road orders. Clearly, he doesn't expect to find this person that robbed all this stuff. Probably never going to track down this watch. He's just doing it because it's a job. Tim frustrated. I think at this point, we'll cut back to his house. House. Tim home, recovering. Called in from work. Sitting, watching TV, dwelling on what he's lost on that moment. So this is a little bit of a slower chapter. We get a big punch. This is a good time we'll settle into Tim's character. This is a good time to kind of explore him a little bit. He'll be thinking about his memories of the feelings of powerlessness. sees ad for local gun shop. So I skipped a line here. It doesn't. I don't need to write. You don't need to fill out every part of this if you don't need to. I know what I need. If I had something else specifically, I would throw it on there, but I don't need to. So this is where we go to the gun shop for the first time. The gun shop, and I would probably think of a good name for this gun shop. I'm not going to do it yet. So characters. We'll have a new character, and this is the villain. This is going to be the villain. And I think we want big alpha male kind of name. Kind of waspy, maybe. Like Norman Winkler. I don't know why Norman Winkler just came to my mind, but I think that's a good name. Norman Winkler. Role and story. Antagonist. Occupation. Gun shop owner. Cult leader. Physical description. I think he will be. He's big. He's a big guy. Big guy. Probably like 6'2", 250 pounds. Not all muscle, but strong, muscled. You know, like he works out. He's probably put on a little bit of weight. He's a little bit older, so you know he's probably a little bit overweight, maybe a little bit of a beer belly, but still there's a lot of muscle underneath that, and still he prides himself on his size. Not all muscle, but strong, imposing. Kind of looms over Tim. I think that's important. Personality, aggro, broy a little bit. Speaks loudly. Doesn't carry a big stick, carries a weapon. Speaks loudly, carries a gun at all times. Confident, bold, angry. Speaks his beliefs, and then yells his beliefs. I think that's important. Habits and mannerisms. Clicks his tongue, maybe. I think it makes some sort of noise a lot. I think that establishing his presence. I'm here. Background. Probably raised middle class. Actually, you know what I like? This is his father. His father founded the store. Father died. Probably in a gunfight. That makes the most sense. Died in a gunfight. Probably over something really dumb. Like road rage. Father died in a gunfight. Road rage. Killed on the street. Norman is this is kind of I think driven Norman to partially has driven Norman to his fanaticism about guns. Wants to defend himself and everything. I don't think I need to write more about that than that. I think that's a good statement. Internal conflicts. I don't think Norman has any. None. That's the thing that a lot of my villains, they don't have internal conflicts. They don't worry about if they've done the right thing or not. They know they think they're right at all times. They don't have no issues about confidence or if they're doing the right thing or not. I like that as a kind of establishing principle about most of my villains. External conflicts. They have a lot of external conflicts, though. Definitely Tim. Other members of the cult. Illicit business partners. Like he has a lot of enemies, which probably it's how it works for. We have all these story beats, and we've started our outline. We have Attack of the Night, Recovery, Gun Shop, and this is where I would just continue doing this. I'd go to the gun shop, and I would. Oops, that's the wrong thing. That's fine. Add chapter outline, the gun shop. I would fill out, oh, this is Tim goes into gun shop, starts shopping, gets talking to Norman. Norman sells him on a gun, and Norman invites him out to the fire range. And we lead to the next story beat, and so on and so forth. And we'd fill this whole thing out. But watching me type, that would probably take another couple hours. That's a long video. But this gives you, I think, a really good idea of how I outline, basically, because this is how I would do it. I would just keep laying out these chapters according to the story beats I have, figure them out, fill out, add in characters as I need them for the story, flesh out the details as I go. I think the only other note I would have is that as I get to the third act, as I get to my last few chapters, I generally don't outline them. I kind of leave them blank. I have in mind, I have the idea of what I'm going to be writing about, but I don't necessarily write it down because sometimes that stuff shifts and changes. It's not going to change a lot, but it will shift enough that I know that I'm going to have to rewrite it and re-outline as I go, which I generally do. If I hit a part where I'm like, oh, my outline isn't really outlining this novel anymore. Something I wrote came up and I thought that's a better idea. I'm going to follow this track instead. I think that's a little bit of the pantser in me. If there's any that does exist, that's it. And then I re-outline from there. I lay down a new track. But that doesn't necessarily apply to you. It does apply to me. I think the thing I will end on is, this is how I do it. This may work for you. This may work for you with some tweaks. This may work with you with big changes, or this may not work for you at all. Whatever I do, you don't like it for whatever reason. You try and you can't come up with new thing, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of reasons why it wouldn't work. That's okay. It's important that you try a lot of new methods until you can hone in on what works, how your process works, and get it to a point where you can repeat it, where you can do it over and over and over again, and it will work every time. That's where I've gotten to with this process, but it's taken a lot of work, a lot of iteration. I've done this a bunch of times, and now I know that this works for me. You have to get to that same point, but the only way you can do that is practice over and over and over again. And some points, I've outlined stories and never written them. And honestly, it is good practice because you need it to know, like, do I need this information? Am I wasting time with this? Maybe. You don't know. Experiment. Again, this is a very informal video and much longer than my normal ones. I'll probably have edited it down a little bit, but I do hope that it's useful to you. And I thought this is much more useful than me just sitting in a chair and talking about outlining stuff. The next video I do will be about the next step, and that is probably the hardest step, and that is writing first drafts. But that will probably be back in the chair. But if you want more content like this, of me sitting at my desk and working on something in front of you, I can do that. Just let me know. Leave a mention in the comments, or if there's any other videos you'd like me to do in general, leave that in the comments too. I really appreciate it. I'll do it. I'm Robbie Dorman. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you really liked it, click subscribe. Until next time, be seeing you.